and welcome to another episode of Staying Power, a show that is all about building a better life. That's what you want. That's what I want. That's what we all want. So every week we come together to talk about one small slice of what that might be, and we hope that it resonates with you, just like it resonates with us, and have some fun along the way. Who do I mean by we? Myself, JDK Winnikin, and my co-host, my colleague, my business partner, my great friend, so many different things. And she's always laughing and smiling, just like she is right now. Ashley Kniebel. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great.
Yeah.
I've been making fun of you for like the last 20 minutes.
I know, in a good-natured way, which is good. And I kind of let you do it because it puts you in the right mood for this show. So I don't want you to think
what it takes?
I don't want you to think I'm some sort of doormat. It's like strategically
You are not
taken.
a doormat.
I know I'm not, but it's fun. It's fun. It's actually one of the more enjoyable things about our dynamic. We like to poke fun at each other a little bit, but of course it's built on a lot. We're actually going to talk about a lot of this stuff in today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about how we can inadvertently, sometimes and to our own detriment, hold on to old versions of other people or old versions of ourselves rather than allowing for change to be a real thing. And if that resonates with you right away, be thinking about an example of that in your own life. And if it doesn't yet, stick around and see what comes up for you as we talk about this. So, Ashley.
Yeah. Hi.
What comes up? Where do you want to start with this?
That question.
Where do you want to start with this?
Well,
or do I need to explain a little bit more about what we mean by this?
Maybe you could do that. I mean, I have an example. There's always reasons why these topics come to mind because we always have examples of conversation and then we're like, oh, that'd be great for the show.
That's true.
So you tell me, do you want to start with a explanation or a story?
Let's see what comes up. I have no idea. Let's just play a little roulette here and see what rolls out. What I mean by this, and when we've talked about this, it can be really easy to get really comfortable with ourselves, with a certain perception of ourselves or other people as they are, right? And so we see in relationships of all kinds, those times where relationships are really humming, people are excited, they're going really well. And then as change inevitably begins to happen, there can be disconnect, there can be difficulty, there can be challenges, there can be confusion that people have is why are things not right now the way they once were? And this may have something to do with the fact, or in some cases it can, where a person is changing and we're not recognizing it, not acknowledging it, not seeing it, not wanting to admit it because it's disturbing a status quo that is familiar to us. And
there's a disturbance in the force.
Right. And that can also be within ourselves. We might actually be limiting ourselves with versions of our own understanding of ourselves. And and so I've experienced that both with myself before and with other people before. So that's what I mean by that. And I think it's detrimental. It's always good when we notice it because it gives us an opportunity to shift a little bit. But that's what I mean by it. You have an example of it, though.
Well, I do. And I did get your approval to speak on this beforehand.
Okay.
What? Look at me like you're surprised. We talked about this and he was like, yeah, it's fine to talk about it.
I'm building dramatic effect for the benefit of our listeners.
So
Go
dramatic.
ahead.
Okay. Well, we were in conversation a few days ago and you were sharing something kind of heavy, kind of personal. And you're like, I'm just going through it. And I kind of started noticing this theme. And I've noticed this theme and I've just taken little mental notes and filed them away of things that you've said. And eventually in this conversation, they were said again. And I think I finally asked you, like, you keep saying these things and you're like, when is the world going to say it's been enough? And I'm like, why are you not saying it's been enough?
Oh, yeah.
You're still replaying this same story over and over and over that was from a long time ago. And is it still relevant? I said, no. And I'm like, great. Are we watching reruns? Let's stow it and move on. There's better things out there.
That was exactly how you put it too. Is
pretty much.
Yeah. Now, I think in the interest of giving people some specificity, while also maintaining a little bit of the privacy of the conversation, I think it's worth explaining a little bit of what this was about. One of the biggest challenges that I've had, and listeners have heard me talk about my past before, working through a period of where I was, as I sometimes put it, running and gunning in addiction, which was a lot of years ago. That had a lot of really negative effects on me and on my family and the people I knew in my life, friends and others, some of which have stuck with me, some of which I lost as a result of that. The lessons of that, because I have been so intentional about not repeating those, moving past those, growing through those into the version of myself that I always wanted other people to believe I was,
Mhm.
sometimes that can lead to this almost over vigilance or over focus on not wanting that old part of me to come back. And what can end up happening is, even though I'm not really worried about that, you know, what it does keep those past things a little more present,
Sure.
right? And you were correct to point out that I had this narrative going on, this limiting narrative where I was looking for outside factors to let me know that I had maybe safely moved beyond needing to worry about those things anymore.
Mhm.
And you reminded me of something that struck on a really visceral level, both intellectually and emotionally, that I actually could choose to be done, to let it go. But because I had been so caught in this old way of viewing these things without knowing I was caught in it,
Mhm.
it took that question. When is it done? You know, and what's so funny is I've said to you in past conversations where you've shared similar things, like where you've said to me, "Well, if nothing else, I'm learning important lessons." And I said to you things like, "Well, when do you get to graduate?
Yes,
When do you
you
get to
have, and I'm
graduate
like,
from that?"
"Wow, that's good. I get to choose my
I get
graduation
to choose
date.
my graduation
Should
date.
probably do that."
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a similar thing, right? And it was so important for me to hear that, because those were certainly things I'd thought of before, but because that's such an internal dialogue and we all have those internal dialogues. We spend more
Mhm.
time every day in internal dialogue with ourselves than we do a dialogue with anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And so we reinforce these things on the regular without really knowing that we're necessarily doing that. And it's until we talk it out, right? And interestingly enough, to give listeners again more backstory, I knew something wasn't working. I knew something was up because I specifically reached out to you, Ashley, and said,
Mhm.
when we can find time, I need an hour or two. I got to let you know what's going on. I got to download some of this stuff that's grinding up. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know enough to know I need to talk about it because I had
Mhm.
that sense that I had those cycles going on. So, yeah, so there's the context for it. So that's what we mean. How do we, and of course, by extension, you and I went into a conversation after that part about, wow, we can do that to anybody,
Mhm.
right? I've certainly done that to people in my life. And part of the conversation we were having that I brought up was about me struggling to allow somebody else to be different, right? Or the
Yes.
possibility of that being different.
Mhm.
And it's a challenge. And what's interesting, since that conversation, I felt a lot better about the whole thing,
Oh, really?
which is
Oh,
good,
yay.
which is good.
Thanks for the
So,
update.
yeah, and so, I think it was important when we talked about doing this as a show concept. I was like, okay, well, there's so many things we could start with.
Mhm.
The first thing is what I was going through and what you were pointing out and what you've gone through before and what I've pointed out is actually a part of how our brains are wired, right?
Yes.
We like familiarity,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
Because what does familiarity give us?
Comfort.
Comfort,
Ease.
ease, predictability,
Mhm.
which, if we have comfort, ease, and predictability, that equals safe.
Yes.
And to a certain degree, that's true,
Mhm.
right? If you know what those things are, there can be safety in that. Now, there can be certainly things that are predictable that are uncomfortable, right?
Sure.
Unhealthy situations can be predictable and they can be familiar, sadly. Uh, but those things, that familiarity also affects the brain because it's kind of the devil we know, right? If it's the bad
Yes.
thing, it's the devil we know, whereas
Mhm.
the unknown thing that might be better is scarier to move towards because we just don't know what it's gonna do. We don't know how it's gonna change us, we don't know how it's gonna affect us, we don't know how we're gonna respond to it. So there's that. So our brain prefers predictable patterns, right? They require less cognitive energy. The frontal cortex processing is so much easier. And that familiarity gives a safety signal to the part of the brain, the amygdala, that regulates that feeling of safety. And then all of the body's chemicals are all in order, body feels okay, and all that. But the problem is if suddenly those things start to get disturbed, we may not always notice that they're happening,
Mhm.
right? Particularly if it's being generated by other people or by our own growth. So,
Well, that's interesting too, because then you might start to feel like, "Oh, something feels weird. Am I doing something? I'm doing everything. I'm keeping myself very safe and handling things every day like I normally do, and yet there's a disturbance in the force, right? There's
Mhm.
something going on, but, there is something that we do also with our lovely brains that is, as you get to know yourself and you get to know other people, you essentially create a file of them, so to speak. And
Mm,
as time goes on and with yourself and other people, you get to know them more, you just keep adding to that file, right?
yeah.
And there are times when it's appropriate to stow that one and start a new file.
Mm,
Because if you think about it, probably the version of you that I know versus the version of you that somebody who knew you through your addiction times or whatnot is probably very different.
oh, yes.
And you might like the version of you that I see more than what they see.
Oh, no doubt.
Because they see all the other things and I see all the goodness and all the growth, and I didn't see you grow, but I've seen the results of it, right?
Mm,
I've seen all the leaps and bounds that you've come to since what all work you've gone through. And sometimes even with yourself, it is time to start fresh and new. And like, it's okay to let go of the things that you've done in the past or those older versions of you.
mhm,
You can mourn it if you need to, if it feels weird or scary because you're like, no, it's still part of my identity.
mhm.
But if it's something that doesn't feel good or you don't like it and you're trying to move beyond it, it's okay to release that
Yeah,
and let it go.
right, right. I love that example because first of all, the visual is great. I visual like the brown
Right. The
folder, you open it up,
accordions or whatever.
right, and it's got the clip in the corner of the photo,
Yep. Oh,
and it says got all
jeez.
the status on it, like a top secret file in an espionage movie, something like that. But nevertheless, I like that. But also, it's just information, right? It's
Mhm,
what's collected and what's expected. And the idea that, one file has to stay the same and just get bigger and bigger rather
mhm,
than here's the old version of that, put that one back away for future reference. It might be of interest. Maybe it could be pulled out if ever necessary at some point in the future. But how about we start building a new file
mhm.
on this?
Well, and reframe, we talk about reframing a lot, but if that's uncomfortable, there's a difference between losing and releasing. And a lot of times
Oh,
people panic when they lose things, right? Because
yeah.
it's at a loss. And now you're like, I need to find it or replace it or whatnot. And that insinuates that you did not have power or say over the situation. It happened without your consent. If you are releasing it, then that means you decided, you chose, you
Mm.
held all the power with that.
And we're talking about the perception of oneself, the
Yeah.
perception of another,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yes.
which they can't really take away anyway.
Right.
Somebody else. They can't take away from us and they can't take it away from our
Yes.
perception of them.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, because that's where like our external conditioning and stuff comes in. How we learn about these things growing up, how they come out in our various relationships, all those different types of things. They can all lead together to create a various perception, that file.
Mhm.
That once we have it, again, there's less cognitive dissonance or effort required to do that. It just you fall back into the comfort of what that thing is, maybe that perception of yourself or that perception of someone else. Now, we can get really philosophical about it and say accurately that no matter how we view someone or how they view us, we don't have them down and they don't have us down 100%,
Right.
50%. We're the only ones who can really know that. And even that is a work in progress,
Mhm.
you know. And yet, the point here is not how do we necessarily get to know ourselves perfectly or get to know someone else more perfectly, even though that's always a worthwhile effort. It's how does that recognition that people are changing, including ourselves, and that maybe new files are necessary on a regular basis. If we embrace that, how does that open up and shift our understanding of how life is supposed to go or how we want it to go, how it can feel, how it can be?
Mhm.
And the good news is, even though it leads to more cognitive dissonance at the
Mhm.
front end and it requires a little more work and a little more intentionality, it does open up a lot more possibility for what might be true and what might not be true. And it allows us more emotional range to allow ourselves to be ourselves and to allow somebody else to be themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think and then we get away from the external conditioning stuff always affecting us. And we're talking more about what you were just saying, that intentional internal conditioning,
Mhm.
that we can condition ourselves to remember that a file needs to be updated and sometimes it just needs to be 86th, retired, put in the
Yeah,
back
right?
room, you know,
Yes.
and then the current file needs to be a little bit different.
Well,
Right.
just don't forget, like, like people's perceptions of you, like you said, you can control that to an extent.
Mhm.
Hopefully you're showing up as a good, wholeheartedly kind, genuine person with
Yeah, whatever
people's
your
best
values are.
interest. Yeah,
Mhm.
best interest in mind. You're probably going to be marked as a good person in their book. However, you do not really get to decide if you're the victor or the villain in somebody's story. They do.
Mm,
They decide that. No
yeah.
matter how you show up, they will ultimately make that. You make that decision about yourself,
Mm,
and you get to choose that.
it's true.
And maybe you were the villain for a long time because you were doing some stupid things,
Yes.
and you can change that, but it takes you to decide that, and then you can replace that and start being the victor.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And it was an important point when you said that to me, that open-ended question of when do you get to how did you put it? When do you get to, rewrite this? When do you get to
As when are you
when do you get to
closing
be done with it?
yeah,
When do you
when are you
get
closing that book?
when you closing
Start
that
writing a
book?
new book.
Right, right, which really worked for the writer. Right?
Right?
It's
I was like,
"Oh,
I
jeez."
need to put this in context that's going to resonate with you. And I'm like, books. We were just talking about him writing a book, so
Yeah.
this might land.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, is that I've been, just as a quick update to everybody, I've been working on my novel a lot more of late, getting it edited and stuff, and it tends to stir all this stuff up because of the
Mm.
nature of the book
Sure.
and how it really was such an internal exploration for me before I really figured out that it was a big internal exploration for me. Took me about 2/3 of the way through the book to go, "Wow, this is interesting.
This book's about
This is a book
me?
about me." Which a lot of writers will say, "Of course, you're always writing about yourself,"
Sure.
right? I mean, there's all that. But it did it there is a gift in that it brings these things up to the surface, and I've learned enough, thankfully, that I know when the water is being disturbed, right? There's something on the surface, I gotta do something. So, and so and you've had this too. I mean, we've talked many times on this show
Mm.
about how things have shifted for you in so many ways in a short period of
Mhm.
time, right? The old file for you isn't if we were to stop
Oh,
3 years
that
ago,
file is, like, on a floppy disk
up
somewhere. Unusable at this point.
usable up on a shelf,
Yes.
collecting
In a
dust.
box with some other ones
Yeah, with a bunch of
that nobody
eight-track
knows what
tapes
those
and
are.
cassette tapes and yeah, I know. Wow. Okay.
You're welcome.
Well, all right. Well, I think we've established sort of where we're going here. So let's take our first break. And when we come back, we'll talk about really what the emotional costs of such outdated views really can be. And then,
Mhm.
of course, later on, we'll talk about ways to kind of confront this in our own lives. Also, when we come back from the break, we will do our weekly segments. This week, it is 2 minutes of triumph. So we'll be back here in just a second. Stick around.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
I'm Angela Bassett. As a first responder on screen, I know what it means to act fast in an emergency. In real life, the same urgency can save lives, especially when it comes to food allergy. For 33 million Americans, one bite can cause a life-threatening reaction. Now, there's a needle-free option, a new way to carry epinephrine. Know the risk, know the options. Be ready to act. Learn more at foodallergy.org/ready to act.
Alternative Talk 1150. It's good for what ails you. This statement has not been evaluated by the FDA.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
We are talking about the costs of holding on to outdated views of ourselves and others and what we can do to let those go. Or as Ashley put it to me in a conversation earlier this week, close the old book and start a new one. And we were pointing out that it does take some work, right? And getting out of your comfort zone to do it.
Mhm.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. But first, it is time for our weekly segment where Ashley and I take 2 minutes roughly to talk about something over the past week that was either a terror or a triumph and talk about what we've learned from it, all in the interest of being vulnerable, letting you know what we're doing, and hoping you guys can do the same. So this week it is 2 minutes of triumph. Here we go.
Yes.
Oh
Okay.
my God, both of you.
I know. I know. Eric and I both get very excited for the yes.
I love that for you
Yeah,
guys.
it's fun. It's fun.
No, it's great.
Check
It's
out the
great.
video on our YouTube
Yeah,
channel, by the way, to
to
see
see
that. Yeah, go ahead.
Live version of that.
What do you got?
Okay, my triumph this week is actually something I'm a little bit proud of. You guys, if you've been listening for a while, you know my schedule is nuts and I work more than I probably should or could. But I've been able to work some health related things back into my schedule, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Oh,
which
yes.
if you know, I have been an avid trainer for a long time of that practice. And I had to take, unfortunately, some substantial time off, much more than I thought, from training because other things in life have gotten substantially busier. And
Mhm.
I've been able to, while it's only 1 day a week so far, but I'm like, I am slowly rebuilding that habit and working it back in my schedule. And it has brought so much joy and goodness,
Mm.
even though it's only 1 day a week. I used to train 5 days. So this is like a real low start. And I'm trying to give myself some grace
Mhm.
and not be too hard on myself, being like, why aren't you going more? But it's been so good and it feels so great. And I get to train with all my girls again, which has
That's
been
great.
reconnecting with those people, and they're
That's great.
beautiful
That's
people.
great.
So
And you've been doing that for a long time, and you've
Mhm.
become quite good at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. What belt are you?
I'm purple.
Purple, which is how many behind black?
2.
2. Getting there. Are you
Mhm.
still shooting for the black belt?
Always.
I love it.
But
I
you
love
have
it.
to go consistently.
Right,
You need to go more
right.
than once a week. So
One step at a
it's,
time.
I have pushed that out a little bit, but that's okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's a great one. Well, congratulations on that. I
Thank
know
you.
that's a big deal for you. So
Thank
that's
you.
great. My 2 minutes, my triumph is overcoming a fear that I didn't know I had, interestingly enough, and also doing some planning. I tend not to plan very much for things. I'm one of those people who I've been working on taking the initiative of setting things up to do things with people, with my family, with friends. Oftentimes I default back into being invited or people, and then I go do them. It's kind of the introverted side of me, I
Mhm.
guess.
Hmm.
And
You have one?
I do.
Wow.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And no, I do. But one of the things I've been wanting to do over the last couple of years is take more initiative to do things and set them up for myself. And one of the toughest challenges for me has been my birthday, which is in September. And it's always right around Labor Day. And so usually like lots of people are gone or they're just coming back from a trip and school's starting again. And it's kind of one of those birthday dates, September 6th, that gets lost in the shuffle of the shift in scheduling seasons, right?
Mhm.
And I've always sort of understood that, but I've also just kind of let stuff go. And all of a sudden I'm in a position year after year where like my birthday's a week away and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I scramble to either figure something out or people are like, oh, I wish we would have planned something. We didn't think about it. So this year I decided I'm going to plan some stuff with
Mm.
different groups of friends over different days. And what I encountered was the plan I'm making for my actual birthday. I started having some trepidation of even putting out the invite for it because I had this little kid feeling of what if everybody says no?
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
On a very emotional, and I recognized it immediately. I was like, this has nothing to do with my group of friends. This has to do with something deeper than that. And I actually mentioned it to one of those friends and I
Mhm.
said, hey, this is coming up. And she was great at giving me some perspective on how to reframe it. And so just the triumph is recognizing that was happening, not beating myself up about it, talking about it with somebody and kind of reaching a point where I could keep going forward with it. So I'm having
Nice.
fun planning some stuff for my birthday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm
Yeah.
excited. I remember, didn't you do like a birthday thing, baseball related
Yeah.
last year?
Yeah, I did with
A whole bunch of
a
different
couple
parks and
buddies of mine.
stuff?
Yeah, down in
Right.
California, right. That kind of thing. And we weren't able to kind of make that happen this year, but that's why I really wanted to make sure I did something. Right.
Mhm.
So anyway, it was kind of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to do something special for your birthday.
Oh, well, that's part of the plan. So we have stuff to talk about. So
Oh.
we got to figure that out. So, all right. So with that in mind, it actually does fit in to this, right? We're talking about old versions of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Old
Right?
version of
How
myself didn't
old?
plan stuff. Right.
5?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it, right. It means that
Whatever
things
age.
from when you're little can still
Yeah.
affect you when you're not so little. And we have to actively, work through those, right?
Mhm.
And choose to go somewhere else. And it's difficult, of course, as we mentioned before the break, Ashley, because of the experience of cognitive dissonance. It's a term that goes back to the 1950s, cognitive dissonance theory, which generally speaking is about the challenge that we can have when we're trying to hold what feel like two diametrically opposed sets of beliefs, values, or things like that, and try to make them fit when they can't, right? We see it thrown around a lot in a lot of our public discourse these days about that. And which is fine, because I think those things should be pointed out in public discourse. In this case, though, what it can do, we can, because we don't like cognitive dissonance and our bodies and brains don't like it, we can just hold on to that old file, if you will. We resist updating our views of ourselves and of other people because it takes work, and not just the intellectual work, but the emotional work that comes with it. If we have to update our views about a friendship we have that is clearly changing and we don't want to admit it, maybe, drifting a little bit, that's painful because it acknowledges the possibility that something you thought was, rock solid or never going to change is changing. And maybe the threat or the fear that the friendship will either not be the same or it will end can be overpowering.
Sure.
Right. Exactly. So it's the impact that can have, though. And this is the other part that we don't like to think about, is holding on to old versions of ourselves and others. It can limit how much we grow or letting other people grow around us. And when we don't allow for that in ourselves and other people, it's going to limit and really reduce effectiveness. It's going to breed things like resentment. Any unhealthy dynamics that are coming up are going to get grabbed, all of those things. So those come to mind. All right. What else? What are you laughing at?
You're funny. Well, it's true. And I mean, I would invite everyone to, if you are feeling something like that, to pause and recognize that, and then reconsider why not giving yourself or the other person the gift and the space to embrace whoever they are now, right? A lot of people always, wait until January 1st to create a new version of themselves. And we
Right.
all know that goes down the toilet like
Right.
3 weeks later.
Right. We've talked about that before.
Yes. And yet people still have that desire to do that.
Yeah.
And I think because there's a lot of things in us that we're like, I've outgrown this, but for some reason that residual identity is just still hanging on there. And then I would again invite people to ask themselves, like, are you the one holding on to that?
Oh, such a good
Is
question.
somebody else holding you to that standard? And if so, are they worthwhile having around? Or should you have kind of a really blatant conversation and say, hey, I am no longer that person. If you don't see me as anything else, this is not going to work anymore. But I'm trying to grow beyond what you currently see me as, and you're limiting me, and I don't appreciate it. That's how I have my conversations. Take that as you will.
In case everybody's wondering, and she's making it sound really easy, she knows how to say that. I've heard her say it before.
It's just, well, I really try to cut to the point, and sometimes it's too sharp. But and that's okay. And you can have that with yourself.
Absolutely. In fact, it probably has to happen with ourselves if we want it to happen with other people.
That was kind of the conversation I had with JD. Now I think I had it a little more softer than that.
You were great.
But that was the whole point. And sometimes you kind of need that little slap in the face of like, why are you doing this to yourself? And recognizing you're doing it to yourself. And give yourself the gift and the opportunity to put that old file away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not cause shame and not cause dispute with yourself and not cause this, living the same life over and over and over again every day.
I appreciate that reminder, because I mentioned relationships and you've given a really good reminder that it has to start with ourselves if we want that, right? It can't be one of those external things, right? Because if we're going to allow it for ourselves, as difficult as that can be, it's going to be easier on some level to allow it for other people. If we've experienced it and acknowledged it in ourselves, and hopefully been in conversations or experiences with other people where that has been acknowledged in a positive way, it makes it easier for us to let somebody else be exactly where they are. And even if we don't like it, that's the thing, is it can be distinctly uncomfortable, right? Particularly with the people that are most important to us. And yet, no matter how important or unimportant someone may be to us, The fact remains is, however they exist, they are only as they are right now, right here. That's
Mhm.
the only thing we truly know. What we knew once before is now gone,
Mhm.
right? And what's to come, we don't know yet. But we wouldn't want anybody to be putting limits on where we're going to go,
Mhm.
or, as you rightfully pointed out to me, to be continuing to pull back towards where we once were.
Mhm.
We would resist that strongly.
I mean, I've never gone to one of those reunion type things, but I hear people that go to, like, school reunions or
Oh God,
class
what a
reunions or
nightmare.
whatever, and I would imagine there is some sort of curiosity surrounding the upcoming date of that, of, like, who's gonna show up and where are they at in life and who are they
Mhm,
now?
mhm.
Because I remember who they are frozen in time from the last time I saw them in grade school, high
Such a
school,
good
whatever it
example.
is, and then you're like, "Are they still that person? Did they ever change their ways?" Wow, they've totally improved. They went a direction nobody thought they'd go,
Mhm.
whatever. But you can kinda do that with yourself in a way too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it fits with what we know to be true in
Mhm,
experience, but then sometimes we need reminders from science to let us know. It is absolutely proven scientifically that people change over time,
mhm,
that we grow,
mhm.
right? And particularly in adulthood. Once we hit adulthood, and people make a lot about, they break it into the decades, right? In your 20s you're like this, in your 30s you shift into this, in your 40s you shift into this. Where I am, early 50s now, the narrative is we're supposed to know exactly what we care about, exactly what we don't care about. Very, very interested, open, and able to do the kinds of things that we're talking about. And
Mhm.
to a certain degree that's true, but the example we're basing this episode on shows that even then, because the things that are kind of I was holding on to are
Mhm.
back in my teens, 20s, and 30s.
Yeah.
It's a big book, right? It's a big book
It's a really big
to hold
file.
on to. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
big file, right? It needs
heavy.
to go on the back.
Well, and keep in mind, and I kind of, in my own intellectual conversations with myself, I had this thought. What I do have them. Don't look at me like that. I
I was not questioning this at all. Do
a
not
little
give people
smile was like, "Oh, of course."
yeah.
Um, you know, and do you ever really stop and think about, probably it'd be somebody in your close circle, somebody that really matters to you, like partner, friend, family, whatever, of what it must be like to live in their shoes and in their brain.
Mm,
Maybe not live in their shoes, walk in their shoes, live in their brain every day. And we don't, because we view people based off of how they make us feel.
mhm.
So
That's our first benchmark, yes,
always. So I'm like,
always.
they're a great person. I love them. I would do anything for them. Why? Because they make me feel really good.
Mhm,
I get some sort of greatness or high feeling, whatnot, because of them.
mhm.
Now, maybe they're a great person, maybe they're not.
Yeah,
But whatever they're doing for me is working. So in my book, they get high regards. But
mhm.
there's other people where, and this has been a hard lesson for myself, where I have one perspective of somebody and I'm like, this person, blah, 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 not high in my book. Maybe they wronged me once or whatever. And now I don't hold a grudge, but I'm like, that kind of stained my perspective of you.
Mhm.
But to other people, they're like salt of the earth.
Mm,
And I find sometimes that perplexing and fascinating at the same time. And I'm like,
mm.
so then I have to think, like, okay, really, is my perspective of that person, is that really them?
Right.
Or did they wrong me once and I'm just like, well, forgive, forget, move on, but you don't look the same.
Is that part of the file that has a big red marker on it so you
Right.
can find it really easily and flip
Yeah. And
right
I'm
to it
like,
when
yeah,
you
that
need
one's got
to?
some worn edges on it. Clearly I've opened it a few times. But you know what I mean? Like
That's
there's
so good.
there's just things that I was like, maybe that person's actually great.
Yeah.
But I'm no longer letting them be great because I can't let go of what happened however long ago, and I
Mhm.
refuse to allow them to be great in my book.
Oh, man.
Is that fair?
It is not, and in fact, if we go back to a handful of episodes where we talked about Anthony DeMello's stuff,
Mhm.
this is exactly what he was talking about. How we are viewing people, if we are viewing them as something that gives us something, we aren't
Yeah.
seeing the
Right.
reality of who they are,
Yeah.
right? And we don't possess them. The same way we don't possess a beautiful sunset, right? A beautiful vista, a beautiful moment,
Mhm.
right, of experience. We don't own that. We're
Mhm.
grateful that we're able to experience it, and those things belong to, we essentially the people that we love and mean something to us mean something to a lot of other people in a lot of other
Yeah.
ways. And it can be so important to recognize, I love what you just said about moving beyond that initial, they make me feel this way. So that's why I hold this version of the file.
Yeah.
When if we really step into in an empathetic way into even just a theoretical exercise of what does it look like to live the way they do, knowing what we know about them, knowing perhaps about their history, knowing perhaps about their challenges, their traumas, their goals, their dreams, the parts of themselves that they don't think that we see, but we do. You know, what must that be like? And that exercise for me is powerful, particularly when I'm in a situation with a person where I can tell things just feel a little different, right? There's some angst to it.
Well, you know, I would even, boy, I'm just all about the listeners today. I would challenge you. If you've, had somebody in your life that at one point was a little salty and you're like, "Ugh, not my favorite." However, you have noticed a change in them and it wasn't just a one-day change. Like maybe this is somebody you see quite often. You're like, every time they're just this way and it's annoying. Who invited them? So on, so forth. And then you have a great time with them one time. You're like, oh, well, that was unique. Like that was actually enjoyable, but I'm not betting that that's actually how they are. That must have been a spoof. And then you meet them again and it's still enjoyable and it keeps getting enjoyable. And so now you're like, did they have a change of heart? What's going on? My challenge is, why don't you acknowledge them? Like, hey, I don't know what's different, but you've been really awesome lately. And I don't know what's going on.
Nothing like
but
saying you
working.
sucked before.
You don't focus on that part, JD. Okay. You focus on the part that's like,
you've been really great lately because for a long time you were not.
You don't say the
I know you don't say that.
But you know what I mean? Like, curious, like focus on the fact, like, hey, like I've had a lot of fun with you, or last few times we've hung out, this has been good, or whatever. Because maybe they did do something, and maybe they are trying to change their ways and rewrite their script.
Yeah.
And they might appreciate the fact that you notice.
I like that. I like that a lot. All joking aside, I think that's really, really important because it gives that opportunity for them to be seen and to know that they've been seen. That's what we want, right? And think about how good it feels when somebody we know acknowledges that to us. Yeah, that's great. Okay,
You're welcome.
that was very good. Very good all the way around. Look at that. Ashley dropping the mic, ringing the bell, right, going into the break. Okay, let's go to our second break. When we come back, we'll talk about some practical things you can do if you are kind of holding on to old files, as it were, about yourself or others. And we'll finish up the show that way here on Staying Power. We'll be back in just a minute.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Don't ask me to talk. There's a lot of talk out there. Political talk, sports talk, girl talk, trash talk, and so on. But there's only one, Don't Ask Me to Talk, helmed by conversational off-roaders and podcast pals Eric Ryder and Stacey Heller. They follow every tangent they encounter, from cultural blind spots to their infamous weekly Wheelo topics. Listen wherever you listen to your fave podcasts. Subscribe and share too. Or tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. or Tuesday at 4 p.m. on KKNW.
Make it a great day. Keep your dial on Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hi.
Talking about holding on to old versions of ourselves and of others. And we're going to spend the last part of today talking about practical ways in which you might be able to start addressing those types of things in your own life, either letting go of your old file or closing your old book or giving somebody else a break and doing the same for them. And of course, remember, if you missed any of this episode or you'd like to catch up on any of our other episodes, you can get this as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow our YouTube channel and see live and recorded versions of every episode. And you can also catch us live on 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle every Wednesday. And at all those locations, you can find the show notes and links of things that we've talked about, as well as our email address, stayingpowershow@gmail.com, and links to our social media feeds. We'd love to hear from you, get feedback, get ideas for shows. hear what's going on with you, and maybe we can even address some of those on the air. So thank you so much for joining us wherever you are and however you're doing it. All right, Ashley, practical things. We always, you were so good last segment, by the way. That was amazing. I wish I had like another minute of break to process that a little bit, but in the interest of time, we can rewind it. That's the cool thing, right? On the podcast, and go back and listen to it over and over again.
Yep.
Now, with that, let's talk about some practical things, like, because it's we're talking in very broad terms, and yet the changes we're talking about require action, right? And steps to do, and sometimes that itself can feel overwhelming. So, one of the places that I start with this is recognizing that the way we act when we hold these files is that we're certain that they're true. Just becoming curious, making a slight shift from certainty to curiosity about in what ways may these not be true anymore, right? And we can certainly reflect on them. We can bring them up to people that we trust. Like, hey, I'm wondering about what things about me are no longer, maybe aren't as true. What have you noticed, right? And here's what I'm wondering about, right? Or if it's about someone else, if yours, and it's what might be possible, even if you don't know the answer and even if you don't ask them. Like, what is different about that person? What might be different? How are they now? Rather than that's just how they are, which is what we always say.
Well, sure.
Right? Or that's just how I am, which is you hate.
Right? Yes, I do.
Asking instead, I wonder what's true, or just wondering, well, I wonder what's true for them now. Just even if you never get an answer to that question, just asking the question opens us up to curiosity and possibility. I think that opens up a lot more of possibility of what might be true.
I like that. I mean, I would say, I guess I kind of spoke on this on our last segment, but when you're going through your day-to-day and you're interacting with people, and whether it's somebody you interact with often or just ever so often, is look at who they are present day. What are their behaviors now? What are they doing now that might be different from who they were back then? And will you allow yourself, and is it okay for you to let go of who they were back then and just accept what you see in present day behavior?
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody else is doing who's meeting them for the first time that day.
That's true. That's true. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Those past patterns may no longer be true, right? Yeah, that's a good one. And another piece that I would add to that is, if you get this thought in your mind, I wonder if that's an old version of that person, allow that thought to pass by, or not pass by unnoticed, but let it show up. That's an act of mindfulness, right? Catching that and letting it hover, letting it sit. Don't necessarily need to answer, right? Because I know when you ask me that question about me, when can you close that book and start a new one? I could be asking that about 15 different things, right? And so all those things, and pretty much they're all floating around. I've made some decisions on a few of them since then, but those can float there. And I think recognizing that, we can then pause, and rather than make, just reinforce that old file's truth, quote unquote, or say it's all different now and I'm scared to death about it, we can pause and just allow the possibility of that, right? And recognizing that we are looking perhaps at an old version to just be true by itself. And sometimes that's enough. Yeah.
Well, and you can reframe. Again, we're all about reframing here. Instead of saying, maybe in the past you were bad at something, you always knew yourself like, oh, I'm just terrible at that. No, I'm no good at that. Like, I know one person particularly that's like constantly like, I am no good with technology, like IT stuff, computers, all that. It's just not my thing. I don't understand any of it. However, I have actually seen this person gain maybe like 2% improvement in that area, whether they actually meant to or just because they had no choice. And they've learned some things and they've picked up on some things. And for somebody in like that situation, instead of just defaulting always of like, oh, I'm just terrible at it, you can say like, and recognize, I'm getting a little bit better. Like, don't focus on the loss and the bad.
Yeah.
Focus on the improvement and the good and the little win in there. Like, it might even be 2%, but that's way better than you were before.
Sure. And it's 2% to the 100% definition of what understanding all that would be. If we're talking about where they were and it's 0%, they've gone to 2%, it's actually a 200% increase of where they once were. So you want to really champion the big numbers. That's big time.
You know, like just looking at that situation from the other half of the coin, the other side of the coin, I guess. So like, it's not always like, I'm bad. This is a loss. This is what's missing, or, whatnot. It's like, this is what's improving.
Yeah.
This is what I'm learning. This is what I've acknowledged and I've noticed. And maybe even just that, like you said, just curiosity is already a reframed step in a better direction.
It is, because when we say we're bad at something, we give it a finality, right? Or you could flip it around. I do this better than anybody, right? Is finality. And that doesn't allow for improvement or change or progress, right? I mean, all of those things make it difficult for us to even be open to the idea that we could learn something new. And again, what we don't like about new stuff is it requires work, and it challenges our brain and our body and our emotions in ways that are uncomfortable. And when we feel like we have those in lots of areas of our life, and we do on a daily basis, in our relationships, in our work life, in our internal life, all of those things, it can make it like one more thing. Oh gosh, don't want to do that. I just want to keep it simple and keep it there. But the problem with that is that we, without even knowing it, we box ourselves into these narratives that can just limit us. And I think on one level, in our bodies and in our emotions and deep in the recesses of our mind, we know when we're doing that, when we're feeling like we can't break free and we don't know what's going on and we don't know why we're feeling, why things are so difficult. We're feeling so miserable. We're feeling so trapped, blah, blah, blah. We tend to go looking at the external things, which may have a role. But what we're talking about is engaging that internal sense of, where might I be limiting myself in my beliefs and my practices, that whatever's in this file? And why do we have to hold on to all of this when maybe the very act of dropping it will give me a little more bandwidth to explore what might actually be more true right now, or could be true going forward? And I think we can feel that.
Sure. Well, and if you feel it, it's okay to compliment yourself on that. I'm a huge advocate of doing that.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I really am. But you can also compliment in other people.
Yes.
And everyone likes to hear a good word about themselves. Everyone likes to feel good. And to be honest, this is just a little side note. I notice a lot of compliments are on things that people have no influence over. Like it's usually about your appearance, how you are naturally, or something of the nature, not of like, hey, you learned a really awesome skill. You have accomplished a really big goal or something, and whatever, like personalize it for the person, but compliment something that took actual work and changes from that person, not just something they're born with.
Yeah.
Like those go so much further when you actually take the time to recognize a value change or a new habit or something that the person didn't just come about naturally, but something they really had to earn to work for.
Yeah.
Because it's such an acknowledgement of everything that they've done. And you can do that with yourself.
It's true.
I do that with myself, and that's why I'm so confident all the time, because I'm like, I give myself the opportunity to recognize the things that I've actively done. I don't look in the mirror and be like, boy, you're pretty. I mean, I do that, but I also am like, you know what? You've really stepped up in your managerial, department and done this today. And that was great.
And you've really, in that department, you've learned really what's best for you to hold on to, and you've learned what's best to let go of.
Thank you.
I've seen that. Yeah.
But, just to use myself as an example,
it's a great example.
It works.
It's a great example. And one for me, I remember having a moment, an experience a few years back with a person who is very important in my life. And we had gone through a period of some distance and some quiet, just to sort some things out. And, came back around the other side and kind of rebuilt as we went. And somewhere down the line, she said to me, we were having this great conversation. She said, I don't know how it happened or when, but I want to point out that you've learned so much more how to talk with me than talk at me.
Oh, wow.
And I remember feeling amazed by that. And it felt really good. And the thing was, I knew what she meant. Right?
Oh.
I was like, oh, okay. And then she explained a little bit more, but I mean, that felt really good to hold on to. And literally just somebody said that to me yesterday in a different context, different person who expressed appreciation. Thank you for this. It was a challenging conversation at the front end. And she said, thank you for talking with me about that and not at me about that. And I went,
Really?
yeah, okay, that's good. And it reminded me of where I made that shift in that conversation, where I caught myself and went, okay, hold on. This isn't in my best interest or the best interest of this conversation. I'm not seeing myself and the other person on the side of this. Let me take a deep breath, which I literally did. And it was my body that told me what was happening. I felt myself tense in my chest and in my back. I was sweating a little bit. And I was like, okay, there's the signs that I'm not in a spot, right, where these things are happening. I'm listening to old files about this person, about myself, about the situation, when I perhaps need to be aware that the situation might be a little bit different than I'm conceiving of it. Yeah. So that stuff matters. And I think it's important to remind everybody that the science of this, the flexible thinking that we're talking about and paying attention to the body on this, it is linked with greater psychological well-being. People who can be flexible in their thinking about themselves and about others, it has been proven to show they have a better sense of well-being about themselves and about others if they're flexible.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you just get blown around on the wind and you just believe whatever anybody says or, any of those things. But to be flexible to possibility, that's why I always say curiosity is so great to lead with, because it epitomizes that very thing. If you're curious, you're flexible. And you're open to hearing something.
Well, and the person on the other side of that is going to appreciate a lot more, because then all of a sudden you're allowing them space and a bandwidth to be different.
Yeah.
And maybe in an area that they've never been given that before.
Yeah.
Might feel a little sketchy because they're like, well, this is new, but it feels good. And then they can build trust with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then they know that you're paying attention and you're not holding them to some sort of standard. Your own file on them is a way of saying it is open, right? And you're open to adding new stuff to it. And when we see that, when we experience that, we get affirmed to that, we're able to do it more because the body likes it, the brain likes it, right? And ourselves remember what that feels like, and we are encouraged to do it more. It's positive reinforcement, right, on every level. And so, what's a good challenge for our listeners?
I've been challenging listeners like all episode.
Want to do it again on the way out?
Oh my gosh!
Go ahead. We got 2 minutes.
Do I have another challenge? Ooh, you know what? Maybe. Well, I would always say, like you say, we always say, start with yourself. Really, and maybe over this next, today's Wednesday right now. Look over the next few days, maybe over the weekend if you don't have a really busy weekend, and look at what is an old file that you can get rid of.
Yeah, just
you
one
can
thing.
release it and store it somewhere else.
One thing.
Let it go.
And even if it's part of your old file, something in your own file or somebody in somebody else's, right? Or think about, or if you notice anybody who's stuck in their old file,
Pull an Ashley on a JD.
Yeah. Ashley's got a very unique way of doing it. It's very effective, actually. You make it sound a lot worse than it is, though, because it's not as hard-edged as you sound. It's direct. It's direct, but it's not always hard-edged. And I think it's because you ask an open-ended question. It's a question of curiosity, right? Your question of curiosity was, when can you close this book and open a new one? That's a curious question. It's not a threatening question. It's not a judgmental question. It's not an attacking question.
Yeah.
It was a question that made me go, she is literally right at my side on this, sitting side by side, asking me this question. That goes a long way. So good stuff. All right. Good challenge for next week. We'd love to hear from any of you who take this on, and let us know what you discover. Again, you can reach out to us at stayingpowershow@gmail.com. Easy for me to say, apparently not. Or on our social media feeds. We'd love to hear from you. We will be back next week with another episode where we're going to take a look at some other way to build a better life. And we're so happy to have you for this episode. I'm JDK Winnigan.
I'm Ashley.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.